We have new reaction now to a growing scandal over American weapons that were smuggled into Mexico and then sold to drug cartels as part of a U.S. government sting operation. This week, lawmakers grilled Attorney General Eric Holder about Operation Fast and Furious, and in a letter from Republican oversight members to the AG came a rare handwritten notation at the bottom of one of those letters to Eric Holder. And in it, Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa writes, quote, P.S. You should check to see if you are getting accurate information from your staff. You might be ill-served, wrote Charles Grassley. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa also signed that letter. He is the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. I spoke with him earlier.
Well, thanks for having me back, and thanks for covering this important issue in which Americans are dead as a result of American weapons being sold knowingly to the bad guys.
You know, there's a lot of controversy over this entire situation, you know, that the guns basically were sold in order to follow those guns into Mexico and figure out where the guns went, right?
Yeah, but let's first of all remember that the bad guys came trying to buy the guns. That was the beginning of the process. The actual purchasers are criminals, and the people that ATF were trying to get to are still targets. In our case, what we're looking at is what went wrong. What was wrong in the organization, the approval, and the oversight of what's called Fast and Furious that allowed for these weapons to be lost track of after they were purchased, and ultimately Americans and Mexican officials paying with their lives because these weapons are now loose.
Now, you believe that ICE agent Zapata was killed with a gun from this operation. Do you have concrete evidence that he was killed with one of these Fast and Furious guns?
We do. We have reason to believe both he and Brian Terry are the victims of these weapons found, you know, in accordance with it and matched up. But I think the important thing is that as tragic as this is, the entire process of trying to do something which we all understand they needed to get people making straw purchases, but where the controls failed and now where the cover-up is going all the way to the office of the Attorney General. And as Senator Grassley said, we know that it goes to his office. We know that there were many of his most key lieutenants involved in this. What we can't understand is why they don't come clean and tell us what they thought they were approving versus what actually happened, so that we can make sure this process is not repeated ever and again in America.
You know, I just want to go back to that point. You know, in order to prove this case in a compelling way, you would need to produce the evidence that those murders were indeed directly linked to this. And you said we do. What do you mean by that in terms of having concrete evidence that these guns with the, you know, the Fast and Furious code on them were indeed used in those murders?
We went and met with, on a voluntary basis in almost every case, both the gun dealers and the ATF agents and other federal officials who are involved in these programs. We have their testimony, voluntary testimony. You understand, these people are heartbroken that they were involved in what ultimately has led to guns being loose. And again, we're not investigating murders. We're not investigating drug corruption. Congress has a sovereign and a solemn role, but it's limited. We're looking at the process that failed to protect these weapons from getting into the wrong people's hands. We're looking at what went wrong in the process all the way to the Attorney General's own offices that allowed for this mistake to happen, and try to find a way to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's what Senator Grassley's doing. That's what I'm doing. We have to be very careful. We do not want to, we've been very careful in release of documents, to redact. We don't want to interfere with the appropriate conviction of these people who bought in straw purchases and passed on the guns that ultimately led to bad things. But at the same time, we have an obligation to the American people to show that we're not going to allow guns to walk into the wrong hands and then talk about gun violence on the street. We've got to make sure that these thousands of weapons are accounted for, that in fact this never happens again. And that's what Senator Grassley and I have been working on, along with so many whistleblowers, so many good people in and out of the federal government that are cooperating. What's disappointing is we don't have cooperation yet from the Attorney General's office. Today we got the first discovery well after subpoenas, and it was very limited. We need cooperation as to the process and where things went wrong.
All right, Congressman Issa, thank you very much for joining us. We'll stay on top of this story.
Thank you for covering this.
Good to have your input.